Hello and welcome to, well, Brooks Builds? Bob Builds? Something like that. Hello, Stacking. Good morning. How are you doing today? Hello, Isitsu. Good morning. How are you doing? Just by the title, you know the stream will have more content than the Apple event did. Well, I didn't watch the Apple event, but I heard about it. So who knows? Maybe we'll accidentally create a new phone and make a $1 billion company. I figure that's like the step, right? We want to match them there. Uh, the Apple event was great. All they needed to do was announce the new color, and I was in. Hello, Xanax. How are you doing today? Good morning. All right, so no voice. Um, oh wait, no, we do have voice. Okay, good. I was seeing the mic go off, and I figured, I thought that there was voice, but I hadn't actually heard myself yet. So I could have been wrong. You could have been right. But it's all good. Don't worry about it. It's always better to double check things and you know, figure them out than just make assumptions. All right. So, happy Halloween, everybody. I completely forgot that today was Halloween. When yesterday I mentioned that we're going to be continuing on with the data tables. So instead, today we're going to be doing something that I like to call courage time. So Halloween is a time where we often have lots of scary things, lots of spooky things, and I decided, you know what? Let's channel our inner Bob Ross today, and we're going to do something courageous, and we're going to basically learn something new. So I actually used to run this when I was in teaching at a code school. Every once in a while, we had our students do what we called courage time. They were going to learn something new, and that means do something in a new language or do something in a new framework, their choice. So today I figured we'd take on the framework part of it. I've never touched or seen leptos before, and so we have two streams, the morning stream and the afternoon stream, to just sort of get as far as we can, play around with leptos, see what we feel about it, and try it out. And I highly recommend, if not necessarily following along with leptos, trying something, try and being courageous yourself. See if you can get pretty far in some new thing that you want to try out. And who knows, maybe you might learn something new. Time to rewrite the LMS? That's the thing. Sometimes learning something new inspires us to do something really awesome and amazing. And sometimes it just makes us feel that we wish we had chosen, something else to begin with. But you know what? All of those things are okay. Because there is no right answer to anything. As long as value is provided, that's the end goal, right? So let's go find leptos. All right, full stack, fully typed, a cutting edge Rust framework for the modern dev. Oh, and I forgot, I have Restream up and I can actually see all the chat over here. It'd be nice if I can make the chat be on the left instead of the right, because they don't have the ability for me to resize things, which is a little bit unfortunate. But that's okay. You know what? I will just move you over there. That'll be easier for me. Thank you, Xanax. Yes, this does surprisingly look okay on me. Chantilly, hello. How are you doing today? Happy Halloween. All right, let's see if we can get started. So let's just jump in and see if they have like a learning by example. Okay, so they have examples. They have a leptos book. Let's check that out. This book is intended as an introduction to the leptos web framework. It'll walk through the fundamental concepts you need to build applications, beginning with a simple application rendered in a browser, and building towards a full stack application with server-side rendering and hydration. Okay, so this book doesn't assume you know anything about fine-grained reactivity or the details of modern web frameworks. It does assume you're familiar with the Rust programming language, HTML, CSS, and the DOM and basic web APIs. It's most similar to frameworks like Solid, which I've never used, and Sycamore, which I've also never used. There are some similarities to other frameworks like React, Svelte, Vue, and Daxis, so knowledge of one of those frameworks may also make it easier to understand leptos. You know, this is also something that's very true for just programming in general, because if we had chosen language as our courage time target, it doesn't matter what language we would choose. There is something about our programming experiences that we'd be able to bring around with us. And that can be sort of like the something to make us feel, you know, better as we're going through the courage. Hello, Zilby. You're going WebAssembly, SSR, or Islands. Hello, Kuvi Man. How are you doing today? He is purring loudly, but probably not enough for the microphone to pick up, and he just wants to be held. Okay, you can find more detailed docs for each part of the API at docs.rs. Important note, this current version of the book reflects 0.51 release. Okay, and then the code sandbox is only 0.4, so perhaps we don't use the code sandbox. Zilby likes the brush. He does like the brush. I'm keeping attention to make sure he doesn't try to like eat the brush, but so far he's just marking it and wanting to be held. Getting started. There are two basic paths to getting started with leptos: client-side rendering with trunk and full-stack rendering with cargo leptos. So I'm not sure which one we want. We probably want, like, we do client-side all the time. Let's focus on some full stack, which I think that's what you were talking about stacking, right? SSR. For the early examples, it'll be easiest to begin with trunk. We'll introduce, okay, well, never mind. They're walking us through WebAssembly first. We'll introduce cargo leptos a little later in the series. If you don't already have it installed, you can install trunk by running. Okay, so we already do have trunk installed. Create a basic Rust project. Sylvia, are you having fun? I'm gonna put you down now. I'm gonna go down here. We can turn on the cat cam. Okay, so we're going to init this. So cargo init leptos tutorial. Did I use a dash? cd into your new leptos tutorial project and add leptos as a dependency. Okay, so we're going to do cargo add leptos, and then we're going to use the features CSR and nightly. So it's unfortunate that it requires nightly for us to work. Usually I don't like to use nightly type stuff. Let's see if I have, is it rest up list? Is it view? What's the rest up? Show. Show. We don't have nightly installed. So let's do a rest up. Is it add? We can set, I don't think I want set. I need to get nightly. So show, update, check, default, toolchain, target. What do I do to get to install? Is it set? It's oh, rest up. Set nightly? Oh, it's toolchain add. Ah, that makes more sense. Toolchain add nightly. There we go. Now we're going to get nightly installed locally, and we'll be able to use that in the feature because that's kind of required for us to have the toolchain here. Also, hello Ninjatron. How are you doing today? All right, so let's do, you know what? I'm going to do a new Ninjatron, subscribe with Prime. Thank you so much, Ninjatron. Also, that was really loud, at least on my side. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How are you doing today? All right, so we have here, we're ready to go. So let's do a cargo add, new leptos. We have features, and I believe the features were going to be CSR and nightly. Oh, and you want, I think we can do CSR nightly like that. There we go. So we get all those. There's a few more features for us to experiment with later. CD into your new leptos tutorial project and add leptos as a dependence. Okay, no, we already did that. I highlighted the old part. Note, this version of the book reflects, okay, yes, they already told us that. Or you can leave off nightly if you're using stable rest. What? Okay, well, that's me for not playing around with it. Let's stay with stable rest then. Is there a way to remove a feature using cargo add? I don't think there is, right? I think I need to actually jump into cargo to TOML. And we're going to remove nightly. We haven't compiled this yet, so that's going to be fine. Using, let's see, using nightly rest and the nightly feature in leptos enables the function call syntax. Okay, so for single getters and setters that is used in most of this book. So wait a second. I think if you do cargo add and you just use the features you want, it will remove it. Oh, interesting. If I use the -f and then the multiple, the list of them. Interesting. I always thought it was additive only. So I'm not a fan of this. I understand they're trying to show that you can use stable, but then most of the book is actually telling you, hey, we have to use nightly. So we're going to go back and add nightly in because we want to actually follow along with the tutorial and not sort of get confused by what's there and what's not. So We're gonna add nightly back in. Nink, hello. Good morning. How are you doing today? I think I pronounced your your username 3 or 4 times now differently. So sorry about that again. But hello, welcome back. So let's see. Okay, so we do that. Now we can set it for this project only. So we've installed nightly. We've cd'd into the project, so we want to rust up override set nightly. Let's update that. Danny, hello, good morning. How are you doing today? Make sure you've added the WASM32 unknown target, so we have that. Create a simple index.html in the root of the leptos tutorial directory, and they want that index.html to look like this. All right, we can do that. And add a simple hello world to your main.rs. All right, so in this, we're going to use leptos. Let's go ahead and get Rust Analyzer going with this. And then we have this mount to body. So this is going to be used leptos everything in here, not just the prelude. And then mount to body, we have a view macro, and that allows us to have HTML. Nice. And it looks like it's slightly different than the HTML macro that we're used to in U. All right, so we're going to do, what is it, mount to body. Oh, I was hoping they would figure it out, but maybe it can't. When something like this happens, I'm going to run the code. We're going to get it to compile everything, and maybe that will make a Rust Analyzer a little bit happier. Because maybe I don't actually have the things that I need to have for this. Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to do an LSP restart. Language server exited. Oh, so we're not getting any help from Rust Analyzer here in Leptos right now. We need to figure that out and try to like update that in some way so that we can actually see what data, like see the changes or see anything else. That's I wonder if it's because it's looking in the wrong place. Oh, but it's most likely that it's a version of Rust Analyzer that's not compatible with Nightly. That's probably what it is. The compiler unit is much faster than your laptop. I don't have the M3. I just have a MacBook Pro, but I do have the M1 Max or Pro or whichever one it is. One of those two. So if you got the M3 Max, that would be even faster than mine. Just a happy accident? Yeah, we can do this without help, right? Maybe. We can also try, I don't necessarily want to use VS Code. We could switch over. So let's come over here and say, hey, which Rust Analyzer. That's still pointing here. Oh, I wonder if I don't want to use just, I probably need to do something like rust up. Let's set everything to use. So we'll do rust up. Is it set default? Set default nightly. Or is it just rest up default nightly? Let's try this then. The M family is crazy. Apple really did change the game with them chips. Apple branding is so awful for that. Unfortunately, they're stagnant, which happens. That it's it's how a lot of things work. Do any of you remember the fun that we had as consumers when trying to figure out which version of Xbox to get? It's almost like it's slightly better than that because at least the numbers are going up in this case. Yeah, they've definitely decided to feel a little bit upset with Intel. They had a very close relationship for a short period of time, but we don't need to worry about like the attacks or something like that on them. It's fine. We can now as consumers enjoy competition and the results of companies fighting against each other, which usually allow us to win. All right, let's see if just switching over to main. No, how do I see the logs? Log up. There we go. Rust Analyzer is not installed for the toolchain. Oh, that's interesting. I thought Rust Analyzer was always installed automatically for this. So what is it? Rest up. What's the command to install Rust Analyzer with Rest up? It's like, is it Rest up install or is this a cargo install? It's been long enough that I've forgotten how to do this. I don't think it's toolchain. Is it component? It might be component. There we go. Rust component add Rust Analyzer. Let's see if that makes it better. Oh, it's attempting to load. I think it's working. Okay, so now we should be able to do this. So we are running mount to body. So mount to body. Do you know how to pull this in? Oh, I don't think it does. Okay, it knows that. So here, we'll do that. Mount to body. You take in a closure. Async job failed. Oh no. Okay. And then we're going to use the view macro. And then we're just going to put HTML inside of this. We're going to have, they're using a p tag? Sure, we can use a p tag. And then we can just use plain text in here. So, hello world. And that's it. That should now display out. Now if we do trunk serve, we have lots of errors. Well, that's not great. It's a sea of red. I'm not seeing any errors showing in here, so it's not something that Rust Analyzer has seen. Although I'm not convinced that Rust Analyzer is doing a very good job at like understanding what's happening. Oh, this is a new well, it is a new a new shell, but that shouldn't matter. That should still run it just fine. This is a lot of errors here. And it's almost like it can't find anything, can it? What? No, I wanted to full screen you. Yeah, so look at that. It can't find none in the scope. Oh, I know what it is. Because I haven't used nightly mode for web development. We're most likely going to have to, but well, I don't know if we need to reinstall trunk, but we probably need to reinstall for nightly the target, right? Let's try adding you in. Also, I can't exit out of the shell. That's not great. Let's okay, let's close the shell. Oh, leptos and oh, okay. Well, that would be a thing. Let's do that. Martin Francis, hello. How are you doing today? Good morning. And good morning, Manga World. Hello, how are you doing today? All right, let's try without doing anything else. Let's now try with quotes running a trunk serve. We still have this problem where it's attempting to find all of these different things here. So we can try adding the rest up target again now that we have nightly, just to sort of see if it finds that. There it goes. Okay, that's what our issue was. And so in a sea of red, when we have all those errors pointing at us and we don't know what they're there for, it's not a reason to be scared. It's just time to be courageous. Just figure something out. And then we eventually get there. You're doing fine? Excellent. All right, so we should be able to load this up now. This is on port 8080. And so there's our hello world. Nice. Okay, so first page is done. Building user interfaces. So the first section will introduce you to the basic tools you need to build a reactive user interface using leptos. All right, let's see how far we can get. That hello world was a very simple example. Let's move on to something a little more like an ordinary app. First, let's edit the main function so that instead of rendering the whole app, it just renders an app component. Components are the basic unit of a composition and designed in most web frameworks, and leptos is no exception. Conceptually, they are very similar to HTML elements. They represent a section of the DOM with self-contained defined behavior. Unlike HTML elements, they are in Pascal case, so most leptos applications will start with something like an app component. All right, so we definitely want something like this where we switch it around to an app, but we don't have an app component yet, right? So if we were to change this, I would assume that Rust Analyzer is going to be unhappy with us. Yeah, it doesn't know where this is. So now it's time for us to create that. You're not very good at speaking English because you're an Arab. Well, thank you for being here. Hopefully you can understand us just fine. But welcome to the community. All right, so We have leptos, mount body. Okay, so let's define our app component. Because it's relatively simple, I'll give you the whole thing up front, and then we'll walk through it line by line. So it looks like we're going to use a component to mark it as a component, and that's going to turn it into what it is. So basically, we're going to use some macro stuff behind the scenes, I believe. And then we have this function app, which is going to import an into view. So if we start with this, let's do component. We'll do now you don't need to be pub, but that's also because we're inside the main function. I believe that if we were outside, we probably would need it to be. So we're going to do a function app. We don't have any properties we're taking in, and we're going to return that import into view. And we can, okay, so we're going to, looks like we're going to create a counter of some kind. So let count set timer, let count set count, and create a signal and then set the initial value, my guess is that's what that is, to 0. And that's going to be, the count is going to be set to 0. Okay, we can do that. So it's going to be count set count equals, and then what is that? Create signal. Create signal, and we'll set you to 0. So it knows that that's going to be an I32. And then we're going to return a view with the HTML inside of it. So we're going to use the view macro, and inside of that, so we're going to have a button. So it looks like we're going to have a button, and the button itself is going to have the count inside of it. That's what it looks like to me. So we can do that. Button. And then we're going to do an on click. Now, something I'm noticing here. This is the closing to that button right there. So the on click is actually inside the button itself. So it's essentially like this. On click. Is that an equals? It is. And then it's going to be the entire closure for this. So we're going to have a move. We don't necessarily care what's coming in here. I'm guessing it's the click event or some other kind of event that would be passed in. And then we can set count. So we're going to call set count, and then we're going to pass it probably a count plus 1. It just sets counts to 3. My guess is that that's just going to make it always 3, but let's find out. So we're going to do that. And then inside of here, my guess is we have a click me, and then we have the move count get. And we have that inside of a single sort of handlebar or mustache or whichever similar to those libraries that you've ever used. Okay. So we have a click me, and we then have a block, and inside this block, we put in a move. So this can probably be done all in one line. And so a move, and then we want to get the count dot get. We're only using that count once, so we can just move it straight in here and it'll be fine. Okay, we've saved it. I saw that trunk reloaded that, so let's check this out. I can now, yeah, just set that to 3. So immediately before I even look at the next thing, I want to play around with this a little bit. So I probably want to say that I want to get the count up here and then add that in there. But if I'm going to do that, I'm probably going to not be able to move it in here either, aren't I? So I have a couple choices here. I can clone the count ahead of time. I'm also thinking I would like to like set this out as a separate function. which would be easier to use. I wonder how good if I could just like move this out. And this is often how courage time ends up happening. It's like abandoning or just sort of taking a little side journey from the original source to sort of play around with things, get an understanding of how they work. So let's do the on click and set this to be this function. And just to know that I've done it correctly, we're going to set this function, set it to 4. And I want to set you to onClick. Let's see if we can do that. Oh, we got on success. And it's 4. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Now, if I want access to the count inside of here, I need to be able to clone it. My guess is that it's some kind of smart pointer. So it probably has the ability for me to, what do I want to say? The ability for me to clone that here and be just fine. So we're going to do let count clone, and then we have move down here. And I want to set the count to count.get +1. Okay, and so now my guess is that this should increment by 1 every single time. Hey, look at that. All right, let's go back to the book and see if they do that exact same thing next. The component signature. Component. Like all component definitions, this begins with the component macro. A component annotates a function so it can be used as a component in your leptos application. We'll see some of the other features of this macro in a couple chapters. Okay, so the function app and then return input into view. Every component is a function with the following characteristics. It takes 0 or more arguments of any type. It returns input into view, which is an opaque type that includes anything you could return from a leptos view. Component function arguments are gathered together into a single prop struct, which is built by the view macro as needed. The component body. The body of the component function is a setup function that runs once, not a render function that reruns multiple times. You'll typically use it to create a few reactive variables, define any side effects that run in response to those values changing, and describe the user interface. Okay, so that's basically our state, right? Wait, no. Just general the body. This is our state. Create signal creates a signal, a basic unit of reactive change and state management in leptos. This returns a getter and a setter tuple. To access the current value, use the count.get, or on nightly, Rust, the shorthand, count. Oh, okay, so we are on nightly, so I should be able to change this to just be count. And then down here, we can update you. And this should still work exactly as we have it before. Excellent. To set the current value, call the set or set count. And okay, so we could do set count.set or set count. .get clones the value and set overwrites it. In many cases, it's more efficient to use with or update. Check out the docs. Okay, so there's also, so with and update are two different options that we can use. We don't have any reasons for that right now. We'll try to remember it, but most likely we'll just forget and rely on Rust Analyzer to help us out or the documentation. But what's more important is that we can know that that there are more methods. The view. Leptos defines user interfaces using a JSX-like format via the view macro. Okay, This should mostly be easy to understand. It looks like HTML with a special onClick to define a click event listener, a text node that's formatted like a Rust string, and then whatever that is. Well, I mean, this is a closure, right? It's got move, so it's the full closure with a move inside. And it uses this sort of bracket notation, which if we've done any web development, we'll recognize this as sort of like the handlebar type syntax that we see in almost every front-end framework. Instead of two of them, it's just one of them, but sometimes that's all we need. DG, hello, good morning. This looks like a fun alternative to React. It could potentially be, yeah. It's very fast and it's very popular. So I would guess that it is. Amna? I don't. Hello, good morning. Sorry if I've completely butchered your username. How are you all doing today? People sometimes joke that they use more closures in their first leptos application than they've ever used in their lives. And fair enough. Basically, passing a function into the view tells the framework, hey, this is something that might change. If you basically think of a closure as a callback function in JavaScript, and you've done any amount of web development in JavaScript, then you can imagine how many closures we're going to need. When we click the button and call setCount, the count signal is updated. This move countGet closure, whose value depends on the value of count, reruns, and the framework makes a targeted update to that one specific text node, touching nothing else in your application. This is what allows for extremely efficient updates to the DOM. Now, if you have Clippy on, or if you have a particularly sharp eye, you might notice that this closure is redundant, at least if you're a nightly. If you're using leptos with nightly Rust, signals are already functions, so the closure is unnecessary. As a result, you can write a simpler view. Oh, I didn't realize that. So basically, we could just throw in count like that. Interesting. Okay, so we do need the bracket still to run code, but it can just be count. And we're good to go there. And you still work as expected. Oh, that's much better. The only negative is it requires nightly Rust. Remember, and this is very important, only functions are reactive. This means that count and count do very different things in your view. Count passes in a function, telling the framework to update the view every time count changes. Count accesses the value of count once and passes an i32 into the view, rendering it once unreactively. You can see the difference in the code sandbox below. So I believe what they're trying to tell us is that if I do this, it's not going to update the number. It's going to paint that to the screen once. And no matter how many times I press the button, it stays the same. Let's see if my mental model is correct on this. Yeah, so the number is updating. We know that because we've seen that before. But because I called it, we got it the first time and it never updates again. Let's make one final change. setCount3 is a pretty useless thing for a click handler to do. Let's replace set this value to 3 with an increment this value by 1. So, interesting. So setCount, this becomes an update now. Oh, I see. Much more interesting. So that's where that update comes in. So we're going to update you. So instead of setCount, so we still have that event from the move, but we're going to change this to be a setCount update. We pass in a function, so we're going to get essentially the count. I don't care about that count in here, so I mean it's the actual value. So I'm going to just overwrite and shadow that. We're going to return count plus 1. A get is a getter and removes the reactivity. It's like unwrapping an optional result. Yeah, it's very interesting. Where it's basically saying, "Hey, I just want this one thing, and I don't care if it ever changes again. I just want that." That does feel like it could lead to, like, if you forget that, some interesting sort of debugging there. But if you want that, then we can do it. Mutate, not return. Ooh, yes, I'm supposed to. What would happen? You're actually cannot add to it. Oh, interesting. So it won't let me add to it. But if I add a sign, cannot add to that. So do I need to deref you? I do need to deref you. People that learn solid, it causes all kinds of headaches. Interesting. I would imagine so. Solid is a whole new way of thinking. Well, that's why we do it in courage time, right? You can see here that while set count just sets the value, set count update sets us a mutable reference and mutates the value in place. Either one will trigger a reactive update in our UI. Throughout this tutorial, we'll use Code Sandbox to show you interactive examples. So here so far is what they have, and they've actually created some examples here to show what's actually happening to get that non-reactive, the reactive, and everything else together. So that's fun. Let's move on to the next step. Dynamic classes, styles, and attributes. So far, we've seen how to use the view macro to create event listeners and to create dynamic text by passing a function, such as a signal, into the view. But of course, there are other things you might want to update in your user interface. In this section, we'll look at how to update classes, styles, and attributes dynamically. We'll introduce the concept of a derived signal. Under the hood, the state is keeping track of the tree and only updates the nodes that need to update. That's why they have a getter. Ah, interesting. So that's basically, the get allows me to say specifically, it's telling them, the framework, hey, I don't want to update the tree. So it doesn't add it to the list of things for it to go update later. It essentially stays hidden from their view. Okay. But of course, there are other things you might want to add to update in your user. Let's see, I think we looked at that. Let's start with a simple component that should be familiar. Click a button to increment a counter. So we have this. It's pretty much exactly what we have so far. Dynamic classes. Now let's say I'd like to update the list of CSS classes on this element dynamically. For example, let's say I want to add the class red when the count is odd. I can do this using the class syntax. Okay, so we have the class keyword, and then I'm assigning it. So now this feels very similar to me. It's like my mental model right now is with view. And in view, I can bind an attribute to some logic or variable. And in this case, it looks like it's binding it to some logic where I can say, okay, I want to class red, and then we just have some function that allows me to do that. Can I actually, so a little bit of side adventure here. If I actually create a function, not a closure. So if we do like a function, create class, don't take anything in. We are going to return, let's do this as a static string. And so I just want to turn, we're always returning red. It's always going to be a red component. And now, can I say, maybe for this, click me, maybe for this button here. want to say class, and we bind this to create class. Now, if I call it, it will call at the time of compilation essentially, or not necessarily compilation, at runtime, and then go in here. And if I pass the function in, maybe it will call it when I want it to. Oh, but it doesn't like that. Attributes should have a value. So what if I wrap this in brackets? Tokens was ignored, expected punctuated node name. Okay, so it doesn't like that. And then if I call you, attribute should have value. So it doesn't like that. Okay, we'll come back to this. Austin, Mass. Hello. How are you doing today? For stacking, would you not recommend solid then? I was considering it for a project and you haven't really worked with React much. So I'd be interested in stacking's answer as well. But my answer to all of these like technology questions is just try it. There's this idea called supple design, and it's a very sort of like courage time style of thing, which is if as you're building it you realize, ooh, this isn't working, then it's time to rewrite slash refactor slash do something else with it. And so maybe you like that, that could be a choice. It's like just start building with it and then see, because that might be the only way to truly understand if your specific app case needs it. Oh, class red equals. So you need to be something like class red equals that. Expected it to found, okay. Expected class to be a function that returns a Boolean. We're getting somewhere now. So this could now be is red. And that's how we can do this. So you're always true. So you're going to have, and we can inspect this. You're going to have this class red here. Not having an understanding of React is kind of helpful in this situation, since you won't have the way of React thinking. The problem is people have the React way of thinking when learning Solid, and it doesn't work the way they expect. Logically, I think Solid makes more sense to you than React. Then in that case, it sounds like you should go, we should at least try it out, right? Okay, so it's basically class keyword and then bind to a name. So attributes take the class name followed by a colon, a value, which then can be a Boolean, or a function that returns a Boolean. When the value is true, the class is added. When the value is false, the class is removed. Now, if the value is a function that accesses a signal, the class will reactively update when the signal changes. Now, every time I click the button, the text should toggle between red and black as the number switches between even and odd. Some CSS class names can't be directly parsed by the view macro, especially if they include a mix of dashes, numbers, or other characters. In that case, you can use a tuple syntax. So class equals, okay, so name, value. Still directly updates a single class. That's interesting. Part of me wonders if I can return a function that returns a tuple that then can now like dynamically do that. I don't know if that's a terrible idea or not. I know there's an M there, but hello. How are you doing today? Okay, so we have this syntax too. if you're following along, make sure you go into your index.html and add something like this. So yeah, we're going to need some kind of style here to then make the actual thing effect. Let's go ahead and do that. Go into our index. We'll add in the style. Actually, you know what? That's JavaScript. Style goes in the head. All right, so if we have the red class added on, it's going to make it color red. And color is going to be the text color, not the background color. So that's going to be something to look for. So if we come back to here, we have red. So that function is always true. So you should now be red text. Excellent. Dynamic styles. Individual CSS properties can be directly updated with similar style syntax. So we have our view, we have our style, position absolute. Okay, so they're basically setting style directly. Style, and then setting the positions of what, like left, top, background color. Normally, I'm not like a huge fan of like directly updating these, but I think it's fine, right? And it makes me think if there's a timer that I can do, like if I just ask REST Analyzer, is there a timer? I saw a set. There's a set count. There's a set interval. Repeatedly calls the given function. Okay, so if I have that, we could do interesting things with JavaScript. We can basically move the button around. We can have that move across the screen. So I could have the closure. So we could have a move, something in here, and then a duration. Let's say every 16 milliseconds or so to get 60 frames per second. So every 16.66. And then I want to have like the position, right? So like we have our X and our set X, our create signal. We're going to start you with 0. So we're going to start in the far left, I believe. We won't worry about the Y for right now. So I want to move the Y. So I'm going to want to put this in a block. Oh, and actually, I don't need to put this into a block because we're only going to set it here. So we're actually fine. So we're going to move set X inside, and we're going to do set X, and then call, we're going to do an update. So we're going to get the current X, and I want to do X, dereferenced X plus equals to like 0.01, something really small. Let's see. Okay, so duration needs to be probably an integer, right? Oh, expected duration. We can create one. A duration from, let's do milliseconds. We'll do 16 milliseconds. You're an I32, so we'll just move 1 pixel every 60th of a second. Okay, so if I have that, now I need to read use. So I want to do a class. Is it style? It's It was style, right? Yeah, look at that. We can do style and then set what it is. So we're going to do style, and then I want, so position is going to have to be absolute, right? So we can just do absolute. And then we can also do style X, which I think is actually left, equals, and then that's going to be X. I'm not seeing that update or run, but it didn't hate this. Now set interval, I'm not actually knowing if it's really working or not. One thing for us to tell, I think you need to use the format to do x plus px. Oh, the px. Yes, you're right. I completely forgot. Update. So we want, I need to make this a pixel format. So style left equals, so, ooh, we don't want to use this as the get, right? Because that's going to, I want to call it and get each thing, but I want it once. I can run a function, so I think you're gonna have to be a function, aren't they? They had a format option and a style thing. Ooh, let's take a look at that. Oh yeah, they do. Yeah, so here, I was thinking we're gonna have to use a closure of some kind. And format, and then we just call it, and we, yeah, that's what we need. Perfect. So we're gonna have you, we are going to move other direction, right? Move, we want the format. We're gonna return the result of this. We want you, px, and we're gonna call an x like that. So you're happy? And now we have animated button moving across the screen, making it harder to click. I know, it's all right. So we can get some fun things going on in here. I think it's important to have fun while we're learning. Dynamic attributes. Congratulations, I am now the most evil version of Bob. I mean, I hope I'm not the most evil, but like if the most evil is still good, then that makes sense. Dynamic attributes. The same applies to plain attributes. Passing a plain string or primitive value to an attribute gives it a static value. Passing a function, including a signal, to an attribute causes it to update its value reactively. Let's add another element to our view. So we have this, okay, we're going to do a progress bar. So we have a maximum 50. Signals are functions. So this value equals count is the same. Move gets to the count. As long as we created that as a function somewhere, which we have, we've done that. Now every time we set the count, not only will the class of the button be toggled, but the value of progress bar will increase, which means that our progress bar will move forward. So, I mean, we can set a progress bar here. We've, our button is sort of gone. Now my guess is that similar to React, I can't put multiple things down here, but let's try. Let's see if it yells at us. If I try to put two different root level things. So if I have a progress bar, are you going to yell at me? You're not going to yell at me, and it just works. And that's what I get. So if I have a max equals 50, okay, that works. Max equals 50, and then what was it, the way to use it again? It's like count equals, or, oh, value equals count, right? So then I want to say, value equals, and then I want, let's say, the x. So we can see that it loads up at the same rate there. What if I say max is actually like, I don't know, a pretty wide number, like, I don't know, 1024. Now it slowly moves to the right. And then if I want, because this is going to be kind of fun, what if I want it to reach the end and then we reverse and come back? So we can maybe set something up here where we have this update. I'm going to put some extra logic in here, where we're going to say if x is greater than or equal to 1024, then I want to minus 1, right? So we're going to, well, actually, you know what? That's not exactly true, is it? I want to know if we're subtracting or adding, because that just goes to the end. I could actually just have it stop, right? I could just say if we're less than that, then we'll do our destructured x plus equals to 1. Otherwise, we don't do anything at all. Tigregalis, hello. How are you doing today? All right, so you're upset. Mismatched types expected. Oh, it needs to be a mutable reference. So if I want to dereference you, you're happy. So now the loading bar and the button are exactly the same. And as soon as the loading bar hits the max, the button also stops. Sort of like a nice way to sort of like tie the two things together. You're watching this through YouTube, on TV, with Twitch chat on your phone. Nice. And there we go. We've our click me button has officially loaded, and it's over there on the right side of the screen. So lots of really cool things, lots of ways that we can now make components sort of rely on each other and do fun things. We can now make it like move backwards and move left. There's lots of things that we can do. If I wanted to make it move left, I would probably use another signal for just the state to sort of track if we're moving left or moving right. And then we can just match that here for if we're going +1 or -1. But let's not worry about that too much. We'll continue on. Derived signals. Let's go one layer deeper, just for fun. You already know that we create reactive interfaces just by passing functions into the view. This means we can easily change our progress bar. For example, suppose we want it to move twice as fast. Well, we can just do this count too. Okay, so that makes sense. But imagine we want to reuse that calculation in more than one place. You can do this using a derived signal, a closure that accesses a signal. Okay, so we have our progress bar, we have our double count, and our double count then gets that, okay. So, I mean, that kind of is what we've done. We've set it to be a signal that the button uses. Derived signals let you create reactive computed values that can be used in multiple places in your application with minimal overhead. Note, using a derived signal like this means that the calculations runs once per signal change when count changes and once per place we access double count. In other words, twice. This is a very cheap calculation, so that's fine. We'll look at memos in a later chapter which we designed to solve this problem for expensive calculations. So that's interesting. So basically we can use, this is good for small things, but not necessarily what we want to memorize for like the more expensive calculations. Advanced topic, injecting raw HTML. The view macro provides support for an additional attribute, inner HTML, which can be used to directly set the HTML contents of any element, wiping out any other children you've given it. Note that this does not escape the HTML you provide. You should make, oh, okay. So don't let anybody else just like provide you HTML. So this is one of the things that's like a little bit dangerous. You want, if it's coming from a secure source like our own server, then yeah, we can return with some HTML and inject it into the DOM. But if it's coming from a source where users have put in some HTML, we want to be a little bit careful. We don't want somebody to be injecting some HTML that's going to be doing something not great, because the least they could do is nothing, and the most they can do is very bad things for your end user. And they can probably also get access because they could put script stuff in there and do an injection attack. Yeah, you can make sure that it only contains trusted input or that any HTML entities are escaped to prevent cross-site scripting attacks. Because they can get like tokens from your user, and that would be not great. So that's fun. So basically we just create that as something and then set the inner HTML to it. Okay. We've actually done that in Vue before, so that's like very similar so far. Let's move on. Components and props. So far we've been building our whole application in a single component. This is fine for really tiny examples, but in any real application you'll need to break the user interface out into multiple components. So you can break your interface down into smaller reusable composable chunks. Let's take our progress bar example. Imagine that you want 2 progress bars instead of one that advances 1 tick per click and one that advances 2 ticks per click. So before we even look at how they do that, let's try that. Let's do this one. Let's try, where is it? Here. We're gonna have another progress bar. I want this to advance at double the rate and be done halfway through. So now value is X right now, but we can turn this into something like this. Now, if I use X like this, I've already used X down there. I wonder if it implements the copy trait. And if it does, then this will be fine. So I want to use, I want X. Now, if I want double, I can do like +1, or I can do times 2. And so if I just do that, we have now 2 of these bars. So the first one's moving half the speed, and then the second one, oh, this second one is moving double the speed. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. To make this make a little bit more sense to us, let's wrap everything here with a div. Because so far we've done everything with inline elements, and that's going to make it a little bit hard to sort of see what's going on with this. Treating all inputs after open tag as its content. Oh, interesting. So everything together was fine until I did a div, and now it's not okay. Interesting. So now if I take all of you, and then put you in here, ooh, treating all input. Oh, you know what? I forgot to close this div, didn't I? That's what that was. Okay. So now everything is on a new line except for the button, but that's because we used that position absolute, and position absolute removes it from the DOM, so it doesn't affect the flow of anything else, which is important to know. Okay, so we've now created a component or a property that uses a derived signal, a derived thing. Okay, so now we want to, oh, it looks like, okay, so we create two progress elements, but it's now going to suggest to us, what if we create our own progress bar component? So let's go ahead and try that. I'm a big fan of like when going through examples like this and learning through books, I just try to do it first before reading how to properly do it, just to see is just to sort of like see if I can figure it out, if I'm learning. It's a trick that I've learned. It forces transfer, and it forces you to sort of like discover where your holes are. So we're going to do component, because I'm assuming this is going to be very similar to the other components, right? So instead of app, there's going to be a progress bar. I'm probably going to need some kind of properties here for this. So what if I want something like the value? So we want the value, and that's going to be, let's say, an I32. And we're going to want to return an into, what was that? It was an into view. Oh, it's not into, it's impl. Impl into view. Okay. Now I want to return a view. This is going to be a very simple stateless component, I believe. We're going to have a progress. We probably want a max also to be set. So we want a max, which is going to be an I32. So we're going to progress. Max is equal to, well, max. We have value equals to value. I wonder if they're going to let me get away with just max and value as opposed to max equals max. We'll try that. We'll make sure that this works, and then we'll sort of check it out. So if we do that, you're happy. Okay, so let's now replace. We have this max and value x. I want to, here we're going to do progress bar on a pass in max equals 1024. And the value equals x. And I want to do the exact same thing down here, except the value is now going to be this move. Oh, it's not times equals, it's times 2. I don't need that because I'm grabbing it that way. Mismatch types expected to type by 32, found a closure. Oh, right, because you need to be, ooh, right. Let's see, so I want to run some code here to get it what we want it to be. I'm guessing that instead of a closure, now if I run a function for this, I don't think that's gonna work. So let's start by not doing that one. We're gonna just do one at a time. So here, what are you upset about? You are a struct. So I want a, oh no, value equals x. We're gonna grab that. So that gives you what we expect. And we still see these, we see this one, and then this one is progress bar max. That's that one. It's not moving. Okay, so it's not doing exactly what we expected to do. So let's go take a look at what we're supposed to have done, and then we'll go from there. Okay, let's create the progress bar component. So we have our function progress bar. It impulls into view. It has that component attribute. We do a view progress max equals 50, value equals progress, which it doesn't know where we're going to get that from. There's just one problem. Progress is not defined. Where should it come from? When we are defining everything manually, we just use the local variable names. Now we need some way to pass an argument into the component, which brings us to component props. We do this using component properties, or props. If you used another front-end framework, this is probably a familiar idea. Basically, properties are to components as attributes are to HTML elements. They let you pass additional information into the component. In leptos, we define props by giving additional arguments to the component function. Okay, so that's... Oh, but we can do this as a read signal, I32, and that lets us take in the progress. Okay, so basically, now progress here equals yes to the count, so it can be whatever this is. So we're going to change this to be a value. It's going to be a read signal of an I32. So that's going to be good. And then max is just a hard-coded number. So if we save you, you're still not working. Let's see, what did I do wrong? So value is read signal. So I want value. Oh, you're upset. I want you to just be the X. Now it works as expected. Okay. And then what I wanted to do before I looked any further is, do they make it so I can just do this? No, they do not. So the value isn't being used here. I have to set it to be equal to that. They might have a trick or a different syntax for it, but we'll get to that if we do. Using a component in the view looks a lot like using an HTML element. You'll notice you can use, okay, so was there anything else in here? So we have a progress for that, and that's going to be some kind of okay, so that's that. Now the return result of you. So if I wanted to replicate this, where we have our value be a closure like this, expected struct read signal I32 found a closure. Right, so then that makes it a little bit tougher. I would need to, okay, so I would need to make this either or in order to handle this. Patatas, hello. You like your client apps dumb, all state in a server. Can leptos do that? I like signal mode to model state, but I also want all my state to live in a server only. Yes, there are two ways that you can do that. You can either do server-side rendering, or you can have a server API that returns with snippets of HTML and then inject that HTML into the DOM. So imagine, let's make this work. Imagine that we have some kind of API for this. So we're going to have like a function. Now, I don't know how to do async in this specific system yet, so we're just going to have to pretend, imagine that this is like an async call. So we're going to do get snippet from the server, and maybe even you can like pass in something to go in. So maybe we take in the value resignal, that's the X, and we're going to pass something back. And this is going to return let's do a static string. In that case, it might be just an actual string that we get back. And I want to return, in this case, we're going to pretend that we get a format. I guess like in this case, it'll be a full string, won't it? We're going to format. We're going to say like a, we'll do a paragraph tag. We'll say, hello, the button has moved something, so some value times. I want to get the value times. And so that just gives us a string of HTML back. And let's put this down here. Where am I? And we're going to call the get snippet. So that's going to be in a block like this. So get snippet. We need to pass in the value. So that's going to be the X. So that's the number of times it's been called. And that should just inject in. So if we go back to our code, ooh, that didn't, it kind of worked. That kind of worked. I wanted, oh, because it's a format, so it's just running once, isn't it? How would I get this to run that function multiple times? Well, you know what? This actually replicates what server-side rendering would do for us, wouldn't it? The front end is updating the value, but the server gave us a very static thing, didn't it? So the server at the beginning knew that it was 0. So that's what we have. And it just loads that up and we're good to go. So does that help? Patatas is basically you can, there's two ways to do that. The true server-side rendering, or just have an API that returns HTML like this. It is static. It is not going to change on the front end. So bear that in mind. But then, you know, you don't want it to change usually if you're doing something from the server once it's on the front end. Anshul, hello, how are you doing today? Is my Axum course out? No, it's not out. We took a little bit of a detour and we made a course for, what is it called? We made a course for SQLX, and that is out. So SQLX obviously can be used with Axum. I imagine that if you use Vue, then it would change. Ooh, yeah, we can try that. So if we got a snippet back from the back end, and then instead of format, we did the view. Like this. I want has moved, and then you're going to be the value like that times. Then you are going to be impl into view. Yes, this would probably, no, it doesn't work. I am passing it the X, and then, yeah, well, I guess it runs, you know what? It runs this function once. It runs the function one time when the entire thing loads. So we would need a way to get it to run this function multiple times in order for that to work. And I think this is going to be a big difference in like thinking of the React way, or like the common front-end framework way versus the current one, right? Because like right now we're used to, with React or Angular or Vue or Vue or something like that, it's like, okay, the entire Vue function is rerunning essentially, and therefore it reruns this function. But really, it only runs this once in leptos. And that would be client side or use the HTML snippet that you said. So you have your sort of choice for this. But if you're going to do, I would lean into it. Like if you're going to lean into like sending HTML snippets from the server side, lean fully into it. Just send full HTML snippets from the server side and then just inject them into the DOM. And then you can do that there. Just be aware that they're not changing. So the value that you're adding in there is set from the moment that it gets loaded into the DOM, which hopefully should be fine. Now there's ways probably for us to fix this. We can make this more reactive if maybe like I took this snippet and then I also passed it into a signal and like then returned that. But that would be a lot more work. And at that point, why are we bothering sending this back to the server? We should probably just set up some kind of interval that's like, or WebSocket or something like that. This is how use effect is different. You need to listen to changes. Yes. This is what islands are for. It's the new way Next works, where it renders the HTML server side and then sends it to client. Your preferred way of making web pages is with HTMX. So the idea of sending snippets of HTML sounds appealing to you. Yeah, so I believe you can use something very similar here. And I think they would just work just fine. The key is to make sure that it's a trusted source. So make sure that there's no chance of man-in-the-middle attacks or something else like that. Demolroy, hello. How are you doing today? Sometimes if I'd be down, I'd love to pick your brain, maybe over Discord call or on stream, about your approach and lessons learned for teaching and course design. You're considered building an OCaml for TypeScript devs course early next year. Yeah, I'd be happy to do a sort of like all about education type stream. That'd be a lot of fun. And maybe I might even be able to like organize a panel if I can get. Let me reach out to some other teachers that I know, because like they love teaching and they're super passionate about it, and we might be able to just do like a panel chat, maybe like a one-off blog, like a one-off podcast type thing. That could be interesting. So Demolray, reach out to me on Discord. And I'll see if I'll see if people who are also sort of like big educators in the space are that I know of are willing to go with me to do this, to do the thing, whatever, something. Okay, so you had asked earlier about my course. So if you go to learning, learning.brooksbuilds.com, I have a single course that we finished and got up and running. So that's the SQLX Rust course. And this is actually available for purchase and run through right now. So if you're interested in looking into this, this is basically SQLX for Rust. Now I'm curious, if I type this in Restream, does that show up everywhere? No, it showed up in a Restream. I don't think that showed up in any of the chats, right? I don't see that in YouTube chat. Hold on, I can fix that. Oh wait, no, that showed up in Twitch chat. It did not show that up in YouTube chat. So there it goes in YouTube. Huh, I put that into that chat over there and I don't see that over here in my live view of YouTube, which is interesting. And I don't know why. That's odd. I guess I'm on the chat. I'm on the chat. Okay. Hold on, let me try this. If I go to open up again. Here. There it goes. Okay, so I now have my stream open like 5 or 6 times. That's fun. So now we have, if you go there, if you're interested in SQLX, if it's something that you've been thinking about using and you've never tried it, or you have like run into trouble with it, it's a $5 course. It has, go into preview here. You can see these are all the lessons that you go through. Every single lesson is a written article, and there's also a video walking you through everything. And then the final one is a test-driven assessment. So it's basically it's a GitHub repo that you pull down and you run through, and it will test to make sure that you've done everything correctly. And it sort of requires you to do everything that you learned previously to ensure that you have an understanding of how it works. So anyways, if you're interested in that, I would love for you to join it, but please don't feel pressured to like buy into it if you want. But it is my first course for sale, which I'm super excited about. All right, so that being said, it is after 8:30, which means it's time for me to head to my day job. I think I'm at least going to start my day job in costume and sort of see if anybody else is showing up to work dressed up. My boss has in the past shown up as a pink unicorn, so we'll see if he's up for it this year too. I might be the only one who's dressed up. But then I will be back here later this afternoon. I will be back later this afternoon at around 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time. I can't actually see. Like I have so many windows, I can't see who's here. Let's see. That I can do a raid on Twitch. Let's raid Togglebit because Togglebit is live. Let me open up Twitch over here so I can actually see what we're doing. All right, I'll let the advertisement play through for that. So anyways, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that you all have a great rest of your day. I will be back, as I mentioned, later today at 2:30 p.m. And I'll be streaming every single weekday morning at 7 a.m. for about an hour and a half, and then every single afternoon at 2:30, except for Thursday. So with that, I hope that you all have a great Tuesday, and we'll see you next time. Bye.